And a warm welcome to you all, and thank you for this for joining us for this really interesting webinar that we've put on for you this morning, this afternoon. And I just wanted to perhaps go through a few of our own screens at the moment to talk about Constructing Excellence. So I am representing Constructing Excellence today. So something about what we do, and we are the united voice of Welsh construction, representing all parts of the supply chain, with few exceptions to that, I have to say. It was set up in 2002 by Welsh Government in response to the Egan report, Rethinking Construction. Some of you may remember that going back some time. We are now in an independent self-funding body campaigning to highlight the industry's role in underpinning key Welsh Government strategies and creating a built environment for the future. And we make the case for collaborative best practice and zero life costs. We also advocate the principles of best practice championing collaborative procurement, and we have many examples of successes and exemplar projects where these tools have been implemented to very good and successful effect. We advocate teamwork in honesty and transparency. We use our influence and knowledge to help shift the focus away from short-term costs towards long-term value. And certainly a watchword for many ways of thinking and going into the future. And our work is very much aligned to the values of the well-being of future generations. And what I would ask of you really is to consider supporting and joining Constructing Excellence Wales, and in order to have a say perhaps within construction and the construction industry generally. We have lots of forums where we work with Welsh Government and many others within in a collaborative way. So we'd urge you to join us. There's quite a lot of value to be had by being a member. So on to the event today. If I just close my I'd just like to introduce you to some colleagues that I've been working with for some time in delivering a very exciting project called the Homegrown Homes Project. And they're going to present with you one of the I suppose the effect of that work that has been done in terms of determining and developing net zero carbon housing in Wales. First of all, Simon Inkson, who was a self-employed, embedded within the housing division of the Welsh Government, leading on the council housing at scale and pace project. So prior to his current role, Simon has been head of housing at Powys County Council and was the driving force behind the development of the project. Simon now represents Welsh Government Housing Division and the project's steering group. Simon has an extensive knowledge of housing issues from a career spanning 32 years, and through regular research, attending and speaking at conferences, reading and networking over the course of his career. Simon has worked directly for a number of councils in South Wales, being a successfully self-employed housing consultant. Simon commenced his career in housing in supported housing projects for single homeless people. Gary Newman is the Chief Executive of the Wood Knowledge Wales, who you may know is quite renowned in that particular area. Gary is construction engineer by training and early career. After completing a wood science master's, Gary established plant fibre technology and has been instrumental in taking a number of bio-based projects from concept to market. Gary is also a founder and executive chair of the Alliance for Sustainable Building Projects. The ASBB is a member organisation committed to bringing product sustainability, resource use, and the principles of the circular economy to the centre of the construction debate. And finally, James Moxey is also part of the Wood Knowledge Wales team. He has a background in academia, working at the University of Manchester and the University of Wales. He was director of the Creative Industries Research and Innovation Centre, based in Swansea. He's been the director of a number of Welsh Government-sponsored knowledge transfer centre projects, managed feasibility studies, and overseen R&D collaborative projects with Welsh companies. His main focus is enterprise and innovation, which means securing funding and providing leadership for innovation projects with a focus on SME. Before I hand over to Simon, I think Simon is willing to take questions after. If it's all okay with everybody, we are recording the event so that then we can share that with others who are unable to attend today. So we'll take questions after each speaker, but there may be a little bit of time right at the end where we can take a few questions that perhaps haven't been fielded up to that point. Otherwise, we'll try and respond to those questions later through the portal and through the emails that we've been given, if that's okay. So without further ado, I hand over to Simon.
Can you hear me okay, Vince, before?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Excellent, excellent. Prynhawn, good afternoon, everybody. And particularly like to say hi to a number of former colleagues from Powys who are on the call. And also, can I start off by apologising to a number of delegates who've probably heard this or a version of this presentation once before or a number of times before. Hopefully by the end of the time that I've been speaking to you, you'll have some clarity about the direction that Welsh Government are proposing to move in towards embedding the net zero carbon agenda in housing, and specifically the social housing, the development of social housing. But also you have some clarity about the collaborative project that we're working with the 11 local authorities and a number of housing associations on, which is the design and delivery of a net zero carbon timber framed home. And this project excites me for 4 specific reasons. I think first, it's the opportunity to lead the transformation of the construction sector in the rollout of ultra low carbon homes, which is very much in keeping with Welsh Government and local authorities' climate change aims and objectives. Secondly, I think by working collaboratively and ordering at scale, we can create the opportunity for the delivery of these net zero homes at an affordable price for the participating social landlords. Third, it's the potential to act as a disruptor for the construction sector and change the way that the development of homes are managed and delivered. And fourthly, and probably most importantly really, is by working with Welsh-based timber frame housing producers, we've got the opportunity for the benefits of housing expenditure by participating social landlords to be captured entirely within the local economies of the regions of Wales. Why do we need to change the way we build homes? I think it's summed up perfectly in these 2 graphics. On the left-hand side of the screen, you have global CO2 emissions by world region. You can see the exponential growth in CO2 emissions just after the Second World War. The second graphic to the right, and those of you who are eagle-eyed will notice this is also features on the front cover of a Welsh Government publication, Better Homes, Better Wales, Better World. It shows the rise in global temperatures from 1850 to 2019. Those of you who've watched Perfect Planet like I have been convinced of the connection between CO2 emissions and climate change, and not just climate change, the biodiversity crisis that creates as well.
Sorry, Simon, I don't think we can see your presentation.
Oh, right. I shall end the show then and try and...
We can see it seems to be stuck on the one slide.
Right, I will reshare.
Okay.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
And has it moved to the second slide?
Yes, it has. Yes.
Excellent. So that's what I was talking about, those two graphics. Hopefully you can see that now. Interestingly enough, the first UN climate change talks happened in 1979. We've not made a huge amount of progress since then, as you can see by the continued growth in CO2 emissions. Welsh Government has taken action. You'll most notably be aware that Welsh Government was the first of the UK administrations to declare a climate and biodiversity emergency in 2019. But before then, we've got the climate change regulations of 2018, which set interim CO2 emissions for Wales. And by 2030, CO2 emissions need to be 27% lower than they were in 1990, 45% lower by 2040, and 80% lower by 2050. The built environment represents 47% of the UK's CO2 emissions. Now, the majority of that relates to the heating and lighting consumed by homes, but as the grid decarbonises, increasing focus is going to come on how we construct homes. And construction alone in the UK accounts for approximately 10% of CO2 emissions. Presently, regulations focus on the energy efficiency of homes, but I'm suggesting to you that regulation is not far away in relation to the upfront carbon associated with the construction of homes. And that's likely to arrive in the social housing sector first, because Welsh Government holds the purse strings, but I think it will also follow in the wider housing sector. And as we move towards net zero, it means we're going to have to be very careful about the materials we choose to use in construction. So what action has the Welsh Government undertaken? Well, to start off with, the Innovative Housing Programme has run for a number of years. Welsh Government have funded 64 schemes, which has resulted in the construction of just under 2,000 homes. 85% of those homes are constructed from timber, and just under 50% of them use Welsh timber. We are about to publish new guidance on design requirements for social housing. It has been called Beautiful Homes and Spaces. I'm not sure if that is going to be the final title. But within that document, we will be requiring or encouraging social landlords to account for the upfront carbon involved in the construction of homes, and certainly encouraging them to use recycled materials. But also, Welsh Government hold the purse strings in terms of grant conditions, and in a short period of time, we will certainly firstly be encouraging landlords to undertake lifetime carbon assessments of the homes that they develop. Then in a few years' time, we will require social landlords to produce lifetime carbon assessments of the homes that they produce. And at some point yet to be determined, we will introduce limits on the levels of upfront carbon in construction for social housing purposes. We will also encourage and then require social landlords to undertake post-completion building performance evaluation studies to ensure that the homes that are delivered achieve the level of performance that was designed to do. Before I move on to the final bullet point here, I suppose one of the questions are why zero carbon and why zero carbon in construction. And I think that that's answered by quite a stunning statistic that 50%, or at least 50%, of the whole life carbon story of a home is complete before the first occupier crosses the threshold. So we need to reduce carbon now, and I think we need to look very closely at how we construct in the future. And why timber? The final bullet point talks about timber framed homes. Well, timber's been described as the wonder construction material of the 21st century for a number of reasons. First, trees as they grow sequester carbon. And I read somewhere this morning that every ton of kiln dried timber contains just under half a ton of biogenic carbon. Timber and timber products contain low levels of embodied carbon. I can hear a bit of background noise. I'm assuming everybody else can. Fourthly, timber lends itself to reuse. Fifthly, engineered timber products such as cross-laminated timber, LVF and glulam provide significant strengths to replace concrete and steel. And sixthly, creating a market for the greater use of timber in construction creates the opportunity and the market for greater numbers of trees to be planted, and therefore more CO2 to be sucked from the atmosphere. And as Gary will probably go on to say, using timber in construction is a means of actually resolving some of our climate change challenges. I'm going to talk specifically now for the rest of this presentation about the piece of work that we're running through with 11 local authorities and a small number of housing associations on the design and delivery of a system for producing net zero carbon timber framed homes. And the piece of work comes out of the Council Housing Development Forum, which is where the 11 councils come together to talk, share their experiences and learn. And the project builds on the work of the Homegrown Homes project and one specific element of that, which James is going to be talking about later. And the proposal sees the 11 local authorities and a small number of housing associations working together to design a net zero carbon timber framed housing solution. It sees them working together to form effectively a buyers club to create that scale of orders, and it provides an opportunity, particularly for councils, to upskill their DSOs to enable them to safely erect and fit out homes, or for councils who don't, or housing associations as well, who don't have DSOs or don't choose to use their DSOs to work in partnership with locally based SMEs. The project was supported by the 11 local authorities in October, and Powys County Council made a successful application for innovation funding to support the first stage of the project, which I'll come on to now. The first stage of the project sees the outcome is the design of a short terrace of 2-bed, 4-person houses to RIBA Stage 4, and in addition to that, the first iteration of a manual for the manufacture and assembly of the homes. So the architect and design team have been appointed. That is Hiraeth Architecture, being led by Rob Thomas. We've established a design group on which 9 of the 11 participating local authorities sit. It's met on 4 occasions so far, and its 5th and final meeting is tomorrow morning. We have worked up the fabric solution, which is an advanced panel system insulated with either wood fibre or cellulose insulation. The detailing has been developed to completely eliminate cold bridging from the home. And there's a recognition that although the homes are ultra low carbon, i.e. they have very low levels of embodied carbon, you can only achieve net zero by offsetting. This stage of the project will be completed by the end of March. And throughout this process, Rob, the lead architect, has stated we need to engage with manufacturers to ensure that what's being designed is capable of being manufactured. And we hopefully address this in stage 2. Stage 2 will see the design of additional property types that you can obviously read. So got 3 property types there. The property type which is being designed, the 2-bed, 4-person house. Those 4 property types represent somewhere in the region of just under 80% of the homes that local authorities are going to require over the next 5 years. So we will be designing the bulk of homes that local authorities wish to develop. We also will be looking to prototype and test the build system, and that testing specifically will focus not just on fire but on structural stability, but also the buildability of the system. We want stage 2 to secure warranties for the build system. The local authority or the participating social landlords are yet to identify which warranties that they would require. Stage 2 will also see the whole life carbon modelling of the homes. So effectively, each home will have its own EPD. And we will see in this stage the development of a manual for the manufacture and assembly of the homes, and we would want to achieve a quality assurance accreditation for that manual. The most effective way forward, we consider, is by advertising a contract for an innovation partnership supplier, and the supplier will both be designers and manufacturers. So what are the next steps? We will be looking to advertise the opportunity for the Innovation Partnership on Sell to Wales in the late spring, and we're hopeful that we will appoint a supply partner in 2021, in the summer of 2021. At the same time as the work in preparation for the letting of the Innovation Partnership is ongoing, we are working with Social Business Wales, which is part of the Wales Cooperative Centre, and with a group of timber frame manufacturers and a designer to form a consortium to hopefully bid for and win the Innovation Partnership. These are all Wales-based suppliers, and I think there's the opportunity of maybe changing that number to 14 rather than 13 after discussions I held this morning. We imagine that the Innovation Partnership will probably take about 12 months, but it may be slightly longer. There are a few Donald Rumsfeld unknown unknowns in relation to fire testing and also the process of securing warranties. They could be slightly longer than a 12-month period. But at the end of the Innovation Partnership, we would have expected local authorities and the housing associations who are participating to have identified the volume of homes that they would wish to secure via a further contract, and then look to let a 5-year contract with the manufacturers who are part of this process. Obviously, we would have to let a contract for the supply of those homes. So I think this project is important because it addresses the climate emergency. I think it acts as a demonstration project. It will produce a high quality, high performing build system with low levels of upfront carbon, and I think it's a system that probably would want to be adopted elsewhere across the UK. We feel that the scale of potential orders should allow for economies of scale to develop and for the unit cost of these homes to reduce. From research on the Innovative Housing Programme, the premium for net zero homes, net zero carbon homes, could be in the region of about 20%. We're hoping that by working in this way, we can reduce that premium further. The project also benefits the foundational economy of all regions of Wales because the timber frame manufacturers we are in discussions with work across all regions of Wales. And it creates opportunities for DSOs to grow potentially, or for councils and housing associations to partner with locally based SMEs to work on the assembly and fit out of the homes. And I think lastly, it demonstrates the benefits of working together in partnership. No single social landlord in Wales would be able to deliver this project alone. None of them have the scale, but by working together, they have the opportunity of delivering a net zero carbon home in advance of many others. I was going to provide you with information about the project in a bit more detail, but I'll leave that to James to talk about. So that's me, and that's my contact details if you want to get in touch. So Vince, I'm not sure if there are any questions. I will unshare my screen. You're on mute, Vince.
Vince, you're back on mute.
Sorry.
You're back on
Back on.
mute, Vince.
Right, can you hear me now?
We can.
Yeah.
Right, sometimes it takes a while to come off for some reason. I think the only question I had was for Teresa Boyle asked about insurers and what they've been asking for with the timber structure. I think it isn't a question really. I think she's pleading for anyone to see whether they've had similar experience of their insurers looking for intermescent paint, or so I guess others can respond to that.
Yeah, it was just cost-effective solutions to that, really, if anyone's got any. So that'll be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, and Chris Marshall has answered you actually, Teresa. So,
Perfect. Thank you.
So no questions at the moment, Simon, but I'm
Right.
sure there may be some more at the end. I guess there's still opportunity there. So if I could hand over now to Gary. Gary, are you there?
Thank you, Vince. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clear.
And can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, insurance and warranties post Grenfell have become a bit of a challenge actually for timber, and what was acceptable methods they're now requiring further evidence. So it's one of the challenges that we have at the moment, but hopefully a short-term challenge. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Wood Knowledge Wales and a little bit about the Homegrown Homes project. But before I start, I just want to sort of say why wood. And as Simon's alluded to, wood is the only advanced industrial material that we can use more of and mitigate climate change at the same time. And why Wales is that Wales has the near perfect climate for fast growing conifers that industry needs. And we have a market within our borders, obviously, for social housing and all housing, but also a huge market in England for manufactured product and timber. The UK is the second largest importer of timber in the world, so there is almost limitless market. And post Brexit and post Common Agriculture Policy, considering that Wales is largely deforested, it seems sensible that we prioritise afforestation and timber manufacturing, and I'll come back to that at the end. So before I get into the detail, just in case you thought that timber was an old and boring industry, just show this slide that Stora Enso are an €8 billion turnover Finnish forest products company, and 70% of the sales revenue of the company today is from products that it did not make 10 years ago. You might not be able to see that array of markets, but in a low carbon world where we're trying to reduce plastic, reduce high carbon steel, reduce cement, you can see why wood is one of the go-to solutions, particularly as you can produce it on land where you don't produce food, or at least you don't produce food efficiently. And then, the technology and innovation is moving extremely fast. So this is CLT, which can be used in low rise, medium rise and high rise. This is a project in London, hopefully you can see, which is Dalston Lane, which was at the time the biggest use of cross-laminated timber in the world. I think that's been superseded now. Can also start dreaming of high-rise, although post-Grenfell in the UK, that's a bit of a challenge at the moment, but in other countries across the world, they're looking to push the boundaries of what you can do with timber. There's also wood fibre insulation. So after you've produced your sawn wood, the residue can be turned into insulation, and the market for wood fibre insulation has gone ballistic in recent months, given everybody's on a decarbonisation journey. It's become hard to get in the UK because we don't have UK production at the moment. And then this is Accoya, which is a fast-grown radiata pine timber, which is chemically modified to be hydrophobic so that it doesn't move when with humidity, and therefore doors don't jam, windows don't rot, and it is becoming the go-to timber for joinery in the UK and across the world. So those are all fantastic recent innovations. So a bit about Wood Knowledge Wales. So our vision is of Wales as a high-value forest nation, a net zero high-value forest nation. We're not a forest nation, really. We're a sheep, beef and dairy nation, and we're not a timber nation. We're very much a steel nation culturally. So it's a challenge for us in terms of the shift. So our mission is to support the purposeful development of Wales forest industries from tree to product, to benefit everybody, really, to benefit the economy in terms of jobs and income and revenue, the environment in terms of afforestation, and of course the people of Wales. What we do is very much knowledge creation and exchange. We do advocacy and strategic interventions, and we like to think that we drive innovation through encouraging collaboration. We're a for public good, not for profit membership alliance. These are all our fabulous members. Some of you I saw on the delegate list are definitely here. We're growing at about a member a month. Companies join as part because of our value proposition, but also they believe in the mission. And you can see there that we cover everything from the forest, organisations such as Natural Resources Wales are members, all the way through to the clients, the social housing, but also private sector clients as well. So Homegrown Homes Project. This is really a bit of pioneering work that Powys led and conceived the project. We tended to deliver it as Wood Knowledge Wales in partnership with Coed Cymru, Cardiff Met and BM Trada. We were delighted to win the tender something like 2.5, 3 years ago. We've now completed the project, and I'm going to talk a bit about the findings and the approach. But the essence of the project was to use more timber to create better, lower carbon homes, and to do that using local solutions. That's local manufacturers and local timber. So our approach was to look at the demand side to improve the quality of Welsh homes through building performance evaluation and whole life carbon analysis. Look at the manufacturing base to improve the quality of off-site manufacturing through collaboration, greater systemization, and the application of low carbon standards, and to improve the case for expanding Welsh forestry through stimulation of the construction timber demand and supply. So those were the three core themes. We did that through applied research, exemplar projects, very much working hand in hand with social housing providers, and in that the IHP came at a perfect time. And then knowledge exchange events, and we're running events all the time. And if you check our website, you'll see that we're doing quite a lot of training on embodied carbon, whole life carbon, building performance at the moment through our Forest Nation program of events. Here's our Google map. You'll find that on the website. So this is quite dynamic. Every time we work on a new project, we have something to say about whole life carbon reduction, use of timber, or building performance. We update that on the map. It's very much work in progress. So I suppose this graphic and this concept came towards the end of our research, which brought together all the outputs into one sort of communicatable place, I suppose. And this is our view on how to deliver net zero whole life carbon homes. Now, there are lots of ways to deliver net zero whole life carbon homes, but we think there's one really good way, and probably almost certainly the lowest cost way, and that's through the greater use of timber. You probably won't be able to see the small print, but it's got 5 key elements to delivering net zero. One is to minimize the embodied carbon, or the upfront carbon, as Simon talked about, and we've got accompanying guidance to explain how that can be done and set benchmarks for target benchmarks for minimizing the carbon emissions from the raw materials and the processes and the build process. Then the lowest cost way to deliver net zero is to have high performance fabric. So we've very much drawn upon Passive House, and the best way to deliver Passive House at low cost is increased systemization and standardization. So you're not reinventing the detailing every time you build a home. Of course, only use renewable energy. Critically, with net zero whole life carbon, you can't just say you're green or say you're net zero or say you're low carbon. You've actually got to increasingly prove it and measure it, as Simon talked about. So that is actually measuring your embodied carbon and measuring your operational energy performance too. So we've also produced some guidance on building performance evaluation, which I'll come to in a minute. And finally, low carbon is still some carbon. And we believe the best ways to offset to below zero, the well-established route, if you like, is through the Woodland Carbon Code and investing in woodland creation. An additional route that we're working on is to be able to use the carbon that's stored in the timber as an additional offset. And we believe if you follow this template for delivering net zero, the cost to offsetting to achieve net zero over a 60-year life is about 2% of the development cost, somewhere between 1 to 2% of the development cost. And building like this, the Passive House community believe that the first time you do it, it's about 15% more expensive. The fourth or fifth time you do it, it's about 5% more expensive. Slightly thicker walls, triple glazed windows, and MVHR. So it's affordable, I think, is the message from that slide. So 3 key guidance documents that we produce as part of the Homegrown Homes project are our embodied carbon guidance, the building performance guidance, and guidance on how you make the right choices with timber frame. And that was very much drawn upon the experience of Trada over many, many years and their QMark knowledge in terms of going out and looking at what didn't quite work on a timber frame project. Because we also found that clients didn't perceive timber frame as being always the cheapest option. And it should be the lowest cost option, but things don't always pan out as planned. So we think that guidance is really, really important as well. So in terms of the embodied carbon guidance, the purpose of it is to increase the knowledge of embodied carbon and how to reduce it. It's written for development and asset managers, design teams, contractors and suppliers. It's designed to help you procure and carry out embodied carbon assessments. It's got benchmarking and tools and examples and signposting. So we launched that last week in one of our events, and we've got 2 more training events coming up. So I would commend those to you. Building performance evaluation guidance is a little bit different. It allows you to create a client specification sheet up front, which sets out what targets you're trying to achieve. And then it holds your hand through the process of design, construction and post-completion performance as to what methods are most appropriate and how to go about it. And it within that guidance, it's got a tool pack with prompt sheets and which techniques you should consider are sort of more fundamental, the core techniques, and which are maybe more expensive and require specialists. Most of the techniques can be carried out by your design team. So then there's the, as I mentioned earlier, then there's the making the right choices guidance. All these are available on our website if you go to the Homegrown Homes page. But how to make sure that your design aspirations are delivered using timber frame and how to avoid kind of common mistakes, because building a timber frame home is not the same as building a brick and block home. So then we've also recently launched guidance on timber cladding, wood windows, and soon to come on wood fibre insulation. We've also provided details on how you might go about, particularly as a housing association, how you might go about investing in woodland as a means of achieving net zero. And we think that housing association partners are almost a near perfect investor in Welsh forestry. Forestry is an attractive investment to pension funds and high wealth individuals, and they are buying land in Wales now. We would rather see it go to housing associations, or rather we'd rather see farmers stay on the land and be incentivized to grow trees. But we also see there's a critical role for housing associations in that. And you can also see here we're working on the carbon storage contract, and we're trying to pilot the use of or the selling of biogenic carbon as an offset in timber-based housing systems, and we've got some details about that on the website. We're also very much working on the policy sphere, and we launched our 5 essential strategies for an emerging forest nation a few months back, and we sent it to all the political parties. We're hoping to get into manifestos. That has 5 key elements. One is the whole life carbon reduction standards. We want to see great ambition from Welsh Government, and I think Simon has indicated that that is absolutely coming. Of course, if we don't then incentivize and support and attract manufacturing, all the products that demand will stimulate will be imported. And that's the case at the moment. So we want to see a really proactive establishment of timber manufacturing facilities. That's timber windows, wood fibre insulation, glulam, all those kinds of products. We'd like to see the Welsh Government use its woodland estate to incentivise and secure high value outcomes. The Welsh Government produces most of the softwoods within Wales. A lot of it goes to low value applications. We want to see it moving more into the high value construction. We want to see much greater emphasis on planting trees and managing those trees for high value applications. And the National Forest is a great start in the whole shift to becoming a forest nation. But we also need to make sure that we're producing raw materials for industry. And obviously, because it's a big shift for Welsh society to become a forest nation, we think there should be lots of initiatives to support understanding of the forest through the sort of socio-cultural aspects. So one of the big pieces of work we did within the Homegrown Homes project is look at what a standard solution might look like, drawing upon all those 5 core elements of delivering net zero. And this document has formed the basis of the Council House Build programme, and my colleague James Moxey, I'm going to hand you over to now, will tell you much more about that. Thank you. I would suggest, Vince, given the time, we go straight into James's presentation.
Yeah, that sounds good. I don't have any specific questions at this time, so most people are saving up for the very end. But yeah, as time is moving on, that'd be great. Thank you, James, if you're able to take that on.
Thanks, everybody. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can, James. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Hello, everyone. My name is James Moxey, as Gary said. I oversee a number of projects at Wood Knowledge Wales, and I led the piece of work that I'm going to talk about today, which is itself, as Gary said, a part of the larger Homegrown Homes project. This was and continues to be a fantastic opportunity, and we were basically given the luxury to take 2 years to undertake research in how to deliver zero carbon homes, mostly using timber and timber related products. So the context for the work is the climate emergency that we are now in, declared by the Senedd, by the Welsh Government and by all 22 local authorities in Wales. And of course, we have many other organisations who have declared climate emergencies. The important thing is the action we take in face of those declarations. Construction obviously has a significant role to play, not just in terms of material choices that we make, but in terms of our design decisions and our build methods, and the consequence for energy demands for the future. And this just focuses on energy. I'm not talking about embodied carbon here. This analysis by the Green Age shows the predicted total energy demand of a small 1930s semi of around 373 kilowatt hours per meter squared. So our brief was to develop a net zero whole life build solution, something that definitely didn't require 373 kilowatt hours per meter squared, much less. Importantly, we weren't planning on developing something radically new. Our aim was to work with the supply chain reflect on the build systems that the timber frame supply chain use, and then see if we needed to evolve these, driven by some clear priorities. And those were to reduce energy need, reduce embodied carbon, remove the use of fossil fuels, and reduce the performance gap. Do all of those things before considering offsetting. So when we've done our best to achieve those, offsetting is a way of compensating to complete the journey to zero. But what does that mean? It means accepting that carbon is always going to be emitted when we build, but reaching zero means that the net amount of CO2 that is emitted from design through to demolition of a building is zero, because we've taken measures, and we believe these measures are to capture and store carbon. So in terms of what we did, I think it was collaborative, and it was built on consultation with the supply chain, with clients, and with our funders. So we assembled a team of multidisciplinary experts, and I'd like to thank them all today for their incredible hard work and dedication to the project. I know we shouldn't single people out, but I'm afraid on this occasion I'm going to. Rob Thomas is a truly inspirational member of the team who wrote most of the report that underpins this presentation today. And you can download the report from our website. I had the pleasure of spending many hours debating, discussing, interpreting, learning with Rob. And even though we had frustrations along the way, we continued with a sense of determination and positivity. And it continues to be a pleasure to work with Rob and his team at Horaith Architecture, who Simon has mentioned. We're working on the innovative housing programme at the moment with Rob. So it's always good to have a research framework within which to respond when you're undertaking a piece of research. And we were very lucky that at the time the UK Green Building Council had developed their net zero framework. And I'd argue that this still provides the agenda that's steering other organisations, such as the Royal Institute of British Architects, who subsequently set some very challenging targets for us all to think about, particularly in terms of operational energy and embodied carbon. So you can see those targets there for 2025 and 2030. 2030, the target is a total energy use, or an operational energy, of less than 35 kilowatt hour per meter squared per year. So as Gary said, I won't go into too much detail on this, but we developed our net zero framework, which again became a guide for us. But we focused in terms of developing the design work, we focused on embodied carbon, energy demand, and offsetting to below zero. We did look at the other two areas, but we focused on those three. And we need to consider total CO2 emissions. As you can see from this diagram, 50% of carbon emissions take place before the first occupier of a home is handed their keys. So in terms of what we did, I'm going to focus on those three principles of the zero carbon framework. We adopted a fabric first approach, which meant getting to grips with embodied carbon analysis. There are a number of tools that can be used to do this, and as Gary said, you can download the guidance from our website on how to do embodied carbon analysis. And we're also running a series of workshops currently, so you can sign up for those on our events page. For this project, we used Ecolab, which was developed by Archetype and their partners. It's not an easy process doing the embodied carbon analysis, but it's doable. It did allow us to model the carbon impact of different components, different materials, different fabric assemblies. We developed 5 timber frame solutions and compared these to a benchmark. So the top you'll see the benchmark, which is filled with PIR foam insulation. And then below that, we have 2 of the fabrics that we developed alongside our timber frame partners. The upfront CO2 emissions of the 5 that we developed, we're only showing 2 here, the 2 below. are 25% that of the benchmark. And we made a very conscious decision not to massively reduce the amount of petrochemical materials that we're going to use in our designs. The second principle we focused on was reducing energy demand of homes. We considered a number of variables, including orientation for solar gain, U values of walls and roofs, and heat loss form factor, as is shown here. So the heat loss form factor is the ratio of the thermal envelope surface area to the treated floor. Form factor considerations are very important in reducing energy demand. What this diagram shows is that the smaller the form factor, so we're going from right to left, it means less energy demand for, or you could interpret it another way as less U values required to maintain the same energy demand. Or another way of looking at it, if you go from left to right, is the higher the form factor, the higher thermal performance needed of our fabrics. And so we need more material, and that comes with higher costs. So both financial and in terms of carbon. We then looked at a typical 2-bed, 4-person housing association house type and reconsidered it in various different orientations and footprints. What you see here ranges from the traditional floor plan on the left to the right, which is a reconsidered townhouse style on the right-hand side. We reconsidered these with different variables, including solar gain. This is a model of the townhouse, 3-floor townhouse option, which is now what we're taking forward into the IHP project that Simon mentioned with the 11 local authorities and some housing associations. I don't really get excited by graphs, but this is something, the data in this graph really helped us make some crucial decisions. We analysed the 3 of the house types we showed, the floor plans I showed earlier, and we analysed these with our colleagues at Greengage in Bristol, who specialise in building physics and the application of passive house thinking, and they used the passive house planning package here. I think it's important to say we weren't aiming for passive house accreditation or certification, but we were just using the passive house thinking to guide our design. The data in this graph was a real revelation for us. The left-hand axis shows space heating demand, and the x-axis, so the axis along the bottom, represents U values of walls and roofs. The diagonal lines each represent combinations of the townhouse. So at the top line is a single detached townhouse and how it performs in terms of U value. These are all orientated south, by the way, for solar gain. So the top line is a detached house. The next line is a pair of semis, and then the next line is a row of 3, etc. So we're going, as we go down through this graph, you're going towards more terraced options. And what this showed us, for example, with a terrace of 6 townhouses with a U value of 0.1, if we could achieve a space heating demand of 10 kilowatt hour per meter squared. Now, we accept a U value of 0.1 is challenging, but we are living through challenging times. We then calculated the amount of biogenic carbon that was stored in the timber of these buildings. And as Gary's already alluded to, that would be used as part of our offset, something we're currently piloting. And we were also able to calculate the size of woodland that we'd need to plant to complete that journey to zero. In this diagram, we've laid it out as a kind of equation. And the woodland, as Gary said as well, would cost between 1% and 2% in terms of establishing the woodland, planting, establishment and management of the woodland. And it's something that the housing associations are very interested in for not just as a role in terms of its role in offsetting, but also and its role in capturing carbon, but also for the other benefits that a woodland would bring to a local community. So the exciting news, yes, we're taking this through now with through an IHP fund with 11 local authorities, and the aim is to develop a draft technical manual for a mid-terrace townhouse, and we'll be publishing the results as soon as possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you, James. Thank you all. Very interesting presentations today. I'm wondering if there are any questions. I've not necessarily seen anything specific, or if there are any queries, they have been answered on the chat. So if anyone has any questions, then please feel free to put your hand up at this point, and we can ask them. I think we have a couple of minutes probably to answer anything you may have at this point. No,
There's one from Joe, Simon, Joe England.
I can't see that on mine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My question is, why are only 11 councils involved?
I can answer that quite easily because only 11 of the 22 councils in Wales hold a housing stock. The other 11 transferred their housing stock in the noughties.
Right. Sorry, just to understand that more, they transferred their housing stock to where?
To a large-scale voluntary transfer organisation. So effectively, each council established a housing association and transferred the stock.
Yes, thank you.
There's a question, Simon, Vince, from Wayne Harris about trees. Do you want me to answer that one?
Yeah.
Thanks, Wayne. We've produced a set of guidance on woodland planting that Gary showed earlier, which again is available on our website. And that document was designed primarily for use at board level to understand the implications, the benefits, the kind of financial cost, the return on investment of planting trees. You asked a question specifically about a tree. There are many different types of species and planting design and locations. So all I'd suggest is if you had a scan of that document, there's a lot of information in there, and that hopefully will help. And again, it's on our project website.
Okay. I had some questions about retrofit. Is it worth retrofitting our existing stock, or essentially demolishing and starting again? And can some of these technology ideas also be applied to retrofit? I think that covers two questions. I think that might have happened.
If I could come in there, what we've presented is the results of Homegrown Homes 1, and we're moving into Homegrown Homes 2, which was all about new build. Homegrown Homes 2 will be aiming to scale up the learning across all housing in Wales, and also start to look in more detail at retrofit. The question about whether we should demolish and in terms of carbon, we probably shouldn't demolish and rebuild. But when you look at all sorts of other influencing factors, then maybe sometimes it is more practical. And the reason why we shouldn't demolish and rebuild is to do with that upfront carbon, what's called the carbon spike. And it's particularly important now because carbon not released today is critically important, you know, and that's why upfront carbon in many ways is more important than the operational carbon. So if we demolished loads of houses, we would have a massive carbon spike. In terms of retrofitting, lots of the technologies are relevant. Certainly the use of homegrown timber is highly relevant because the majority of wood goes into retrofit, but also particularly wood fibre insulation, because that's been proved time and time again to be a very effective external wall insulation or internal wall insulation, critically, but in a way that doesn't block moisture flow, so it allows the old wall to breathe. They need to breathe, and wood fibre insulation allows that moisture to flow in and out of the wall, and therefore avoiding condensation and mould. So highly relevant to retrofit, I would say.
Vince, there's a question as well from Francis and then Andrew. Do you want me to? I could probably take both of those.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Francis, that's a really good question about applying the knowledge to existing housing. Yes, it can be applied. Greengage, who we work with on modelling design, also model existing buildings in terms of current energy demand, and then plan what could be done to them and how that would reduce energy demand. They do that regularly, including the impacts of using internal, external wall insulation as part of that modelling. So it is done. The only caveat is it's very expensive, not the modelling, but the application. I don't know if I hope that answers that question. But Andrew's question about establishing a forest, that's a fantastic. They're both fantastic questions, but I particularly like this one because there are so many variables in terms of tree planting. But one thing it does allude to is species. So an oak forest will put on more carbon over 100 years. These are ballpark figures. Over 100 years than a Sitka spruce coniferous plantation. But a Sitka spruce plantation will do it quicker. It will put its carbon on in about 40 years. So what we really want to be looking at is a mixed planting process following the UK forestry standard principles. But interestingly, we're undertaking a project at the moment looking at what trees we should plant in the future, considering the changing climate. We were recently awarded that, so that's been a big success for us, and we're looking at that currently. I hope that that answers those questions, Vince.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any further questions now, and of course we've just gone over time, I think. So I guess really, could I thank you all for your presentations? I think they've been extremely interesting from my perspective, and well done in terms of all the work that has been done so far. So congratulations for that, and hopefully it will continue. I think you've also given quite a number of links, which provides plenty of homework for all the attendees today to go and pick up those documents and have a read, and also new opportunities for people to attend events which are coming up very soon, and they can keep an eye on your website, I guess, to see whether they wish to participate, because this is a very topical subject at the moment, and of course it's one which probably all local authorities and housing associations right across the UK are grappling with at this point in time. So it's very, very an important subject in that respect. So just to thank you from that, I suppose I could bring it to a close and just thank everybody for attending, and just end at this point. Thank you very much all. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.